Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome costume designer Whitney and Adams, who joins us to talk about their work on Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Whitney will talk us through how she designed for a film set in two different decades. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Whitney. Hi Whitney, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
And we're here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which has come out recently. How have you found the reception and reaction to the film?
It's been so amazing to see all the fan interaction and all the love that's been outpouring for it because especially we put so much effort and love and work into this film, so it's really amazing to see the fans appreciate it so much.
I think as well, like the first film did so well, there was probably a pressure for the second film, and then the fact that it's based on pre-existing property, and then you've got fans of that, and then there's probably fans of the film. It's probably very difficult to, they probably added pressure on it as well.
Absolutely. And also, I was one of the few new department heads on this film since I didn't do the first film. So it was amazing to be welcomed by the entire cast and crew when I started production and to be a part of this special franchise.
How did that come about? Because being the new person on the block, that must have added like a little bit more pressure because everybody knows each other. And it's like you're that new kid at school. It's like make sure that you don't get bullied for your lunch money or anything like that.
Exactly. Well, luckily our main Blumhouse producer, Bea, what I'd worked with her before and she connected me with Emma and we just had such an amazing first meeting and we sort of dove in from there. But I'm really thankful that Bea gave me a call and connected us.
I think sometimes it's just those moments, aren't they, where you just the right person, right time. And it's like there's no rhyme or reason to what people are saying and what they're doing in a way, and you kind of can't say no when an opportunity comes up.
Absolutely. And to get to meet all these amazing cast and crew, they're so talented. And everyone was absolutely lovely from my first phone calls with the actors to working with production designer Mark and just everybody was phenomenal. Truly a fantastic team of people.
Like when you're joining on as the newbie, where do you begin with your research? Because there's obviously a pre-existing stuff out there, and if you kind of want to follow the tone that's already been set, but then also you want to add your mark and also make sure that people know that it was Whitney's costume designs this time around.
For me, it was really getting to know the entire universe. I didn't really know much about Five Nights at Freddy's before I dove in to prep on this movie. And so I was watching every YouTube video and going down every Reddit rabbit hole and searching the entire internet for theories and ideas. And I got all of Scott's books that he had written. Too much of a scaredy cat to play the games, but I watched some people play the games on YouTube. So I had a very intense familiarization period where I just wanted to immerse myself in everything, especially when thinking about the FazFest film, part of the film that I was going to create. I literally, every cosplay I could possibly find, I put into a massive database on my computer just so I could, use the fans as my inspiration.
That probably adds a bit more pressure when it comes to that sort of the fans fest and going into the cosplay, because probably then realizing actually this is it's like I knew it was big, but then this is even bigger, and then seeing everybody's work and how much like the labor of love that people go into it must be quite incredible.
Oh, absolutely. And also, it was helpful for our film for the Faz Fest that I had certain stipulations where it's a smaller festival in a smaller town. It was put together probably pretty quickly, and so nothing could be too elaborate, which helped us a lot since we had over 150 costumes to make, cosplay costumes to make. So we really were working on them from day one all the way through to we finished. I think we filmed the scene 4 months into prep and filming. So we had started work on them for 4 months, and it took that entire time to make everything. But I just had posted everyone's cosplay photos on the wall, and as we had time between different things, we would put together new costumes using those pictures.
Do you find as well that like even though you have that amount of time to prep for it, sometimes it kind of feels like you might not have enough. But
Yes.
then also,
Yes.
you have so much time that you kind of feel a slight relief when you're done because you're like, we've done it, we've managed it. Now let's get it shot, and hopefully, no one no one ruins the costumes whilst we shoot, and that they're like, just minor little things.
I know it was really down to the wire always. No matter how much time you have, it still is down to the wire or finishing everything in a mad dash, glue guns out day of. Especially a lot of things were made out of cardboard and paper and wire. And so you're hot gluing things that have fallen off. And there's the fun of that and the organicness that it feels like these elementary school or middle school kids put them together themselves. And that handmade quality like can't be forced. You have to just go ahead and do it and make it. And so there was just a lovely crafting quality to everything.
I guess as well, you can kind of get away with like, why is that button missing? It's like you have to think about it,
Yeah,
it's been done by a kid.
exactly.
They don't know how to sew,
Yeah. Yes. So, it was easier to let the perfection go because they're all supposed to not be perfect. They're supposed to be handmade, homemade by kids. So there was such a fun and freedom in that.
Yeah, and I guess as well, you can kind of play around a bit more to know that you can have those imperfections and that.
Yeah.
I don't want to say things don't matter, but it's more the what's the word like costume breakdown of it and how it's like you're presenting it in a lived-in manner, rather than it looks like it's just come off the shelf.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that nothing looked manufactured or purchased. We were given a bunch of pre-fabbed Freddy's Halloween costumes that we just to have the raw materials. So we cut everything apart, and we wanted to make sure that nothing looked manufactured or not homemade. And so I'm grateful for all the raw materials we got from those Halloween costumes. So we ripped and cut and took everything apart to make it look different.
When you have something where you have so many costumes to make, do you start prioritizing ones that that would be sort of front and center of the camera, or do you just literally just say, we got 150 to make, let's just
Start
attack it?
getting them out. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
kind of a bit of both because we had the 3 featured Fazfesters that were talking to Toy Freddy. So we knew that they would. So we focused on them. And then also we had 2 sort of jump scare cosplayers at the high school. So those 5 were more front and center. We spent a lot more time thinking about exactly what those were going to be. And then everyone else is like, just keep putting things together and we'll put it together on the day. But even those featured cosplayers, we made a whole bunch of stuff, and I had my team make these specific things that I wanted. And then in the fitting room, I was mixing and matching everything until I landed on the exact right style of everything.
Okay, so there is a sort of like mixture of having stuff that will be front and center, and then, well, in air quotes, would be prioritized, whilst others a bit more.
Exactly. I will say my first movie that I worked on was The Great Gatsby with Baz Luhrmann, and I was assisting Catherine Martin. And I remember that I learned from her that Baz could just pull some random background and pull them to the front. So every single person had to be dressed head to toe perfectly. So when we were putting all of our background outfits together, everyone had to be a superstar. You had to focus on everybody. So it was a lot of work, but a lot of reward. And so I sort of took that to every job that I do, where you never know what background's going to end up front and center. So you want to make sure everyone looks great, and they could be in the front of the scene.
Yeah, and that's still quite funny as well, knowing that like somebody could be pulled out, that person from the corner, and you're like, oh no, they're not.
Yeah.
It could be something just not right.
Yeah, if there's always a couple of ones that you're like, oh, maybe it would be great to not have them featured. And I tell the second AD on set, hey, maybe put them in the back.
And that is also like in a way that probably a bit harsh on them on the day, but it's like, phew,
Yeah.
I'm covered, we're all sorted. What's the
Yes.
problem?
Yeah.
What I'm curious to know about as well is that the film itself is set over two different time periods, and so we are looking at sort of early 2000s and early 80s. I can imagine working in one time period is hard enough, but when you're working within two, it's probably even more difficult and a lot more sort of connecting dots in terms of, okay, so scene 5 is in the 80s, scene 10 is in the early 2000s. We need to figure out what we're going to use on each day, the continuity, and maybe even reuse something from the 80s just to pepper in a little bit of visual show don't tell sort of thing. And how do you go about prepping for the two time periods and doing your research over both eras?
Research is definitely the most important part. I love diving into both those time periods and finding references that were real and true to life. You can look at movies or magazines or different photos from the time, but they don't really accurately reflect just small town America. And so it was looking at Flickr, and people upload their family photos and candids, and then I found a whole bunch of, you know, Chuck E. Cheese sites where people were visiting all these pizzerias, and I was able to get pictures of all of the people just there. And so all those real candid photos are such a good foundation for what that scene is going to look like. And then you're also looking at J.C. Penney catalogs and getting tons of yearbooks and other references. So I must have bought 20 different yearbooks from Midwest America from, the late 70s and early 80s, just to, get great candid photos of kids from that era, especially with so many kids in the opening. And then another key thing is keeping our two stocks separate. So we had the 80s costume stock, and then we had the 2002 costume stock. And so, making sure that those two didn't overlap and they stayed separate. So when we're pulling things for a certain character, it had to come from the right place.
Did you ever notice as well, like the fashion between the sort of 80s and the early 80s and the early noughties, that there might have been some sort of overlap as well? Because I guess there's such a big gap between it all and how fashion kind of I don't want to say recycles, but kind of comes back into the forefront with certain things. Were there things where you kind of like, wow, we can use these for both time periods?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, stripes and plaid were two of the biggest patterns in those 2 decades. I mean, the cut is very different between 80s and 2002. Like there's a slim line of the 80s, and that in 1982, it's sort of really late 70s still. And so you have a very slim cut, whereas early noughties, it's all oversized. You're right. It's all big and baggy except for little baby doll tees. So there's certain things that you can play with the styling and the shapes, and there's a little bit of overlap, but not very much. I mean, the patterns and colors, there is a lot of overlap there, but the shapes are very different. But I did love that Y2K is back in our current fashion era. And so shopping for all of our 2002 time period was actually quite easy, especially because I needed so many multiples for all the stunt doubles, photo doubles, crazy death scenes. Like I needed a lot of the same pieces. And so because we're very much in that Y2K fashion bubble still, I was able to get a lot of stuff that looked perfectly spot on.
Because it feels like such a cheat code, doesn't it?
I
Like,
know.
I feel like
It was great. Like I think Old Navy and Gap did a 1999 like reissue, or late 90s reissue while we were filming, and I was like, thank you. So it was very helpful.
again, perfect timing.
Yeah.
But I guess like because you're mentioning like looking at like old photos and the Chuck E. Cheeses, like I remember going to stuff that's similar in the UK with that, and I'm now just picturing like the not so great food being in the ball pit, being like trying to get through those areas, and then also just like the birthday parties, and also like the slide burns that if you got like
Hmm.
shorts on
Yeah.
going down those slides.
Yeah.
Um, but that also like I find the research period the sort of most fascinating when I'm talking to guests, because you kind of pick their brain about what they were looking at, but then also um like getting a weird sense of nostalgia of like maybe
Mhm.
in your time period, because the early 2000s are my time period. So
Same. I really had a lot of flashbacks because I used my own yearbooks as reference for like half of Abby's boards were just me in middle school. And so, because I felt sort of a kinship to her character, and so much of what I wore in middle school is were my references for Abby. So that was a really fun connection. But yeah, getting to pull out all of my own yearbooks and use them, I had it was really tough to be like, oh no, I'm old enough now that all of my yearbooks are historical reference.
but at least that's it. But then, you know what? For production, it saves money,
Oh, sure
because
it
you don't
does.
need to you don't need to worry about getting them.
Yeah, I
Um,
have them already.
but even that is like a historical reference, and then sort of looking back and thinking like you can't even say, "Wow, I can't believe we used to wear that," because now it's back in fashion.
Yeah, it's back. It's everywhere again. So I got really lucky that our time period is where our current fashion cycle is for a lot of youth these days. It was funny in the 1982 flashback that a lot of the kids were just not used to having clothes that didn't have stretch in it. I was putting them in actual 1970s, 1980s denim, and they're like, why can't I move? I was like, yeah, I mean, this is what kids used to wear, no stretch and all of this denim. So they had a little bit of an adjustment to wearing things, and they got comfortable as the day went on. But it's like, yeah, it's different. It's different from what we're all used to now.
Yo, that's quite funny. But then also like the shock on those kids' faces, being like, "What? How do I move
How
in
do you
this?
move?
How
Right.
can I do anything in this sort of stuff?"
Yeah.
No, but again, it must have been quite funny to see the shock on people's faces when they were trying it on
Right.
in fittings and sort of getting ready.
Exactly. But I'm grateful that there's so many brands that have been classics since then. And so shoes, it was a lot easier for kids to bring their own stuff from their own closets, from Converse to Vans to any sort of sneaker. It was great to be like, hey, if you have any of these, you can wear them. And just having kids be comfortable in their own footwear is super important. And so I'm glad that I was able to use a lot of their own pieces.
Mm. And that again, nice little cheat code
Yep.
um, with kids, and what they can have in their closet as well.
I put
Perfect.
together these big boards for our school background. I think I had like a 40-page research packet of all the different trends from that era, and I sort of challenged them to like dress as your favorite kid stereotype from this era. Here's the camo, here's the short sleeve with a waffle tee, long sleeve underneath. Here's the super baggy pants. Do you have any Junkos? They still sell them now. So it was great. I had a bunch of amazing background dress up in like the perfect outfits. They took all the references to heart and they rated their own closets. And it was really fun to see them show up in like the perfect outfits.
I feel like as well, do you find you can invoke creativity in kids as well, with
Yeah.
what they want to look at and what they want to find?
Yeah. They had so much fun. And so that's what I love is it's so fun to work with our background, to be like, let's have the best time we possibly can. And if they get to have fun putting together their outfit before they even come to set, it's like already starting off on a high note. And so it's just really, really fun to bring that energy up, and also helps on set too, where they're raring to go. They're ready to do their part. And so that's how I think of my part in this whole thing, is not just doing the clothes, but also how do I set the energy right for the rest of the day.
Yes, and it's I guess that's a good way of looking at it as well, that you're setting the energy for it, and how
Mhm.
you can bring people who are already there, and how they're sort of feeling and excitement. Because being on the film set is exciting, but it can be very
Mhm.
tiring as well.
Yes,
Um,
also that. Yes.
with long days and whatnot, and especially when you've got people of a certain age as well, and excitement, and like they'll be buzzing until it gets to like lunchtime, and it's like, oh,
Crash.
I'm
Yeah.
yeah, still doing
Right.
this.
Yeah.
There's Also, something that came up is Jim Henson's Creature Shop, that you managed to work with the good folks there.
Mm.
And the costume design overlapped with the animatronics for the design of, I'm probably going to butcher these, but Lisa Nett and Abby and Nett.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yes. When it comes to, because like in my mind, when you have costumes, I this was what I was sort of pondering on beforehand, was like the animatronic side and then sort of costume side that goes with it. And I was kind of thinking, I wonder if Whitney like did have a part to play in it, because who got, who does what in a weird way, especially when it comes to something like animatronics, or when people
Mm.
use puppets as well, or even like an Avatar where it's all digitally scanned, but they still make
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
by hand, will still make it properly. And how did you go about working with the Jim Henson's Creature Shop, and what were the conversations like when you were designing and working with animatronics as well? I can imagine there's probably a lot less stress with animatronics than it is with humans, because when it comes to fittings, that they're not, the dimensions might not change because of a diet or something by mistake.
Yeah, a puppet is gonna be the same size and doesn't have opinions. I mean, my favorite part of this job is working with my actors because I love creating a character together, but it's also really fun to get to work with the creature shop and schedule fittings for a puppet. And originally, when I read the script, I knew the Lacey Net and the Abby Net were happening, but talking to VFX, talking to Emma, we sort of initially thought it was going to be all visual effects. And then I just had the question of, but how? Like how are they going to blend? Is it just going to be the face? And so when I was doing all of my fittings with Abby, with Piper, I started leaning into the stripes of the era. I mean, 2002, tons of stripes was a huge thing. And so I decided on this one outfit with this striped sweater that I loved. It sort of was a nice foreshadowing of the marionette, even if that's all it was going to be. Also, I liked that the outfit was purple, which is a reference to the Afton family, and so that was my initial thing. And visual effects sort of took on that. I sent them the fitting photos, and they're like, "What if it's a grayscale, black and white, or gray and gray version of the sweater?" And then the rest of it is the marionette body. And I was like, that's so cool. And then I took their idea and I ran with it. And then we had 4 hand, sweaters knitted by hand by we have amazing knitter in Savannah who did them for us. But like we had less than a month to get all 4 sweaters done. And one of them had to be gigantic to fit the puppet. So it was definitely a tall order. And then trying to distress knitted knitwear is very difficult because you don't want to pull one string because the whole thing will unravel. So having to knit the whole things, then make holes very specifically, and then how to distress it on top of it. So it's like a really big challenge in a short amount of time because we're also doing it over November and the Thanksgiving break and filming the flashback. Like we were filming the flashback during the day of all of the River Freddy's Pizzeria with all the kids, and then at night we're filming the Abbey Net. So it was like the hardest week of the shoot for me. But once we'd figured that out, but also proportion wise, making sure that the sweater looked like a sweater and not a tunic, but it had to cover her whole torso so visual effects could do the legs properly. So that it had to tick so many boxes. So a lot of math involved with that one. I mean, if anyone out there who wants to be into costume design, you also have to really be good at math too. There's a lot of math in costume design. And so we did that. And then when we were thinking about Lisa, I had the knowledge in advance it was going to be the same sort of thing. And so focus on stripes for Piper, for Abby. So I thought for Lisa, let's focus on the 3 white buttons, which are the other sort of iconic part of the marionette puppet. And then so I was able to sort of design her costume with the transformation in mind. Whereas Abby, I had to sort of do it backwards. So definitely a tall order, but it was so cool to work with the amazing Creature Shop and get to know all those amazing folks and get to schedule my fittings with the puppet and see this creation that's part visual effects, part Creature Shop, and part me. It was very cool.
Do you find as well, because it's like you're working with a puppet, and I'm not sure how often something like that might happen and come up, because stuff like that might not happen that often.
Right. It
Um,
doesn't. Yeah.
do you find that like when you're doing it, you just think like kind of pinch yourself a little bit, being like, wow, this is crazy, but this is so much fun at the same time.
Absolutely. I don't really get overlaps like that very often, especially a puppetry department is not something you usually have on a film set. So that's a new one for me. And I've been a huge fan of the Muppets and Jim Henson my entire life. And so it was just a really amazing thing to get to work with them. I mean, I'm gearing up to Christmas Eve. My family, I watch Muppet Christmas Carol every single year. And so it's just cool that now heading into this Christmas, I'm like, yeah, I just got to work with the Creature Shop, and it's a pretty cool feeling.
Because then you mentioned Muppet Christmas Carol, that is something that is forbidden in our house because the Harley and Marley song used to scare my
Oh,
brother,
oh
and
no.
yeah, we're not allowed to play it.
Yeah.
Even though he's close to 40, we're still not allowed to play it. But even when sort of looking back at like working with Jim Henson and having that sort of because they'll have people who are so experienced and their craft is so niche. How do you about taking like working with them and sort of taking the information that they're saying to then incorporate in your designs as well?
Definitely seeing the craftsmanship and the amazing attention to detail that they have and how much time and effort they did to really bring their part of this world to life. I mean, the star of this movie are the animatronics, and their work had to be perfect, especially because ever all these fans are going to be pouring over every inch, and they were clamoring for details as we were making the movie. And just so cool to see the very intense love, but they had a tall order. They were up against a lot to make sure they did it properly, and they, hit a home run out of the park. And so just getting to see that attention to detail on set every single day, it's something that I aspire to every single project, is to have that much attention to detail in everything that I do. And costumes is not necessarily very showy, especially sometimes you really want the clothes to blend in because you want the character to feel real and grounded. So sometimes our work is a little bit invisible in a way that's good for the story, but also not necessarily good for us as costume designers. But it's all about those details, and every little thing adds to the general feeling. I mean, sometimes an audience can tell when the details are off and they can't really put their finger on it. And that's why I strive to like really think about every single costume piece in such a detailed manner. I mean, I ask so many questions about how long has this character had these clothes? Do they take care of them? Do they think they're special? Do they have certain feelings about them? I mean, a laundry list of things on every single piece that they wear to make sure it all feels true. And so that kind of level of detail is what I really aspire to. And I feel kinship with them in that.
I think you're right in terms of like the invisible work, especially when it comes to like a period film or a film where, like a horror film, people don't necessarily come for the uh, costumes, but you still want it to be authentic and look correct. Because if they don't, then something will definitely be off. But then also, it's about, I don't know, like getting the right thing, right? Like the right color palette for someone, or like the right fit. But as you said, if something is slightly off, then you know people will be the first to sort of jump up and shout about it.
Right. And just getting to see the fan reactions to my use of purple in this movie. I mean, it's such an important color in the game. And I made sure that the entire family of William and Michael and Vanessa, they each wear purple at different parts of this movie, different shades of it. Vanessa's is the lightest, William's is the darkest. And, storytelling in that way. But seeing all the fans pick up on those little details has been super fun. And it is super important to make sure all this stuff is exactly right, and balancing colors and details. And you're also working with the actor to make sure that they feel grounded and they feel like the character. And so you're balancing their needs and your needs and your vision for the character. So it's like a lot of spinning plates at all the times, and they're all intersecting and overlapping, and it's a lot to keep track of. It's why I usually hibernate after a job, because it's just so full on.
Well, yeah, of course, because it I don't think people realize how much it kind of takes out of you when you're working on the job, and not just probably the what's it called, like energy, and how much like little sleep you probably get,
Yeah.
but it's also the creativity and how you are the creativity part of it, and how what's the word, I don't want to say creatively draining, but it's like how much of like creative juice that you use up,
Yeah,
and how you might need
absolutely.
to look after yourself with it.
Absolutely. It really takes everything out of you. I mean, I took a bunch of months off after this was done. Well, I finished this movie and immediately moved across the country from Virginia to LA. And that took, so once that was done, then I just hibernated for a while because it was a pretty intense time. But yeah, we're on set 12 to 16 hours a day. You're thinking about it when you go to sleep, you're thinking about it when you wake up. It takes up your entire living, waking life. But that's how you get everything done.
Yes, and you kind of live, breathe,
Yes, all of it.
all of it.
It's like I know so much of the lore now. I know so much of all the things Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those things, isn't it? And I think if you don't throw yourself so much into the work, then you kind of feel like, well, why bother?
Yeah, did I do everything that I could have done? I mean, it's also very important to keep boundaries. And once my hours are up for the day, I go home, I decompress, I stretch every morning and evening. I do weightlifting to keep myself strong because it's such a physically taxing job. I need to lift heavy costumes. I mean, it's very physically laborious. And I think, again, people don't necessarily understand that. And you're carrying tons of bags when you're shopping and moving things around, and then you're distressing, and it's a lot of work, and so your body takes a big toll. So like sleeping and stretching and weightlifting are like the three most important parts of my off time.
Mm. And like once, I don't think people realize that even if you have the costumes are like bagged up and you're carrying them, the amount that people carry in just one hand as well, I've
Yeah,
seen, is just incredible.
so heavy. I mean, that's why I can lift so much now. It's like I have to do it for work, and I want to be doing this for decades to come, so I got to stay strong.
And again, yeah, just funny that the sort of things that you wouldn't realize when it comes to costume design
Yeah,
and
it's like I
costumes.
weightlift to be a costume designer.
Yeah, probably be like, what's
Yeah, what are you lifting? Yeah.
how does that work? What, really?
Mm-hmm.
No, that can't be
Yeah, or
right.
like
Yep.
you're at rental houses and you're like reaching up on the top of tall ladders to like grab all these heavy wool costumes down from like the highest rail. And yeah, very, very physical.
Also, there's costume houses, incredible how much they have.
Seriously.
It's just insane. It's the same with prop houses where you turn up and you just look at them and you just think that
Yeah.
is that's a lot of I wouldn't say junk, but there's a lot of stuff that
It's a
people
lot
have.
of stuff. I mean, everything is useful in there, and you got to dig to find treasures sometimes. But I got most of my 80s clothes from Cali Collection, which in Atlanta, and they just have the most amazing 80s kids stuff, and so I'm very grateful. But yeah, it was a lot of digging and getting on tall ladders and getting it all together.
Yeah, yeah, again, hoarder's paradise.
Yep,
Those places, but they're actually
absolutely.
organized as well. What I'm curious to know about as well, like with you were mentioning earlier about the number of not identicals, duplicates of
Hmm.
costumes for support stunt teams or even the visual effects that's needed throughout the film. Um, were there any moments where you kind of have to think about people's everyday clothing, that if there's going to be stunts, maybe we need to adjust it in a way that it's going to be extra bit stretchy. These vintage jeans might not work because if a stunt person has to do a roll or something, they'll just split at the seams, and it just becomes quite impractical.
It was definitely I when I know that there's stunts involved and multiples needed, I tend to try to design the costume to adjust for that. And, say I know that not in this movie, but in one of the previous movies, I had an actor going through a pane of glass, and I wanted to keep them as safe as possible. So I designed the main hero's costume to be full sleeved, heavy denim jacket. And so the only skin they had out were the palms of their hands. And then we put like mole skin on their hands, and they only got like one or two tiny, tiny cuts. And so because I was able to backtrack and design the hero costume for my principal actor to protect the stunt actor, I try to do that as much as I possibly can, knowing what's coming down the pike. Luckily, in 2002 clothing, everything is very roomy, very boxy. You can hide a lot of pads underneath a lot of those things. And so I lucked out in that regard. There was nothing too tight that I needed to hide harnesses or pads or anything under. Everything fit very nicely, which was very helpful.
Okay, that's again interesting to sort of hear and find out, because working within time periods, it's like, how much do we change? How much can we alter? Should we alter
Right.
that? Should we not alter it? How
And
many others do we actually have?
William Afton, Matthew Lillard's character, he has a bunch of stunts in his dream outfit. And so we bought modern pants to look like late 70s, early 80s. So nice, like vintage style denim, but he had to wear a harness, he had to wear pads. And so I had to have different sizes depending on what he was wearing underneath the jeans to make sure that everything looked correct, but it could still fit all the safety things underneath.
Yeah, and again, that must be such a headache, being like, oh, we got the perfect outfit. It's like, yeah, it's not going to fit around this harness.
Right. And because that whole outfit it had to look like it was from the late 70s, early 80s, I still had to buy everything new. So I had to search and search and search and find things that felt from that time period and then tweak them, tailor them to look a little bit more time period accurate, um, and do the best you can to judge. But nothing like that can be fully vintage unless you're building it from scratch, which we just didn't have the time to do. We had the time to buy things and alter them, but you're always down to the wire. But I think we did a really good job trying to make it look from that time period, but it was all modern stuff.
Well, I didn't notice anything where it might have been out of place. So, yeah, hats off to you guys. And then just to wrap up the episode, what was your favorite costume to design?
It's a tough question. I mean, of course, I loved the Lisa net and the Abby net so much, but I really, really loved getting to do the River Freddy's uniforms. I did so much research into late 70s, early 80s, like food restaurants and of course Chuck E. Cheese's, but also fast food. And I got a million amazing photos from uniforms of that time period. I wanted to feel like it was previous to the uniforms from the first movie because this was an older restaurant. So I wanted that late 70s vibe to them. And so I found a few just like perfect photos. And then I found a bunch of late 70s pieces on eBay, which I bought. And I sort of combined elements from each one of those to make our uniforms. And so getting to design and create those was super, super, super fun.
I think it's quite a solid choice, and I think you could have a lot of fun with it because you're looking at the different time periods of fast food restaurants and those eras as well. And I feel like now, like the color palette that people use is slightly different, and maybe not as fun and as bright.
Way not as fun. I mean, I really love those uniforms from that time period because they were just happy and fun and earnest. And I feel like everything now is just boring gray polos. I'm like, what happened to fun? Why does everything have to like be sleek and branded and boring, essentially? Give me bright contrast colors any day.
Yeah, and it feels also muted. It's like, why would I want to come in here if there's not bright colors or something a bit more fun going on?
I know I miss the themed McDonald's of yesteryear. They were just such a joy to come in and get your ice cream cone. And I'm like, what happened to that? And Taco Bell and all of those, like the ones of my childhood just had the most fun designs. It's like, what happened to whimsy? What happened to joy? I think more restaurants should bring that back.
I don't know, maybe we should start a petition or a hashtag.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
bring back more joy to our food.
More joy, more whimsy.
Whitney, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. What a joy to be here.
And Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is out now. Go out and watch Whitney and her team's beautiful work. Thank you again. You take care and bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.